Michael Mulhern, I'm Director of Planning for the, I can't really say newly established Development Corporation anymore. We've been around for 14 months, so we are in our infancy still, but we're learning what to do. So we've got to start listening to a lot of the lessons that have happened around the Olympics and how they've stitched that in, and lessons from what's happened around Canary Wharf are all incredibly useful for us. We all know 33 opportunities, someone will correct me, 33 opportunity areas. I won't be so heavy on the stats as Robin. Robin's nodding, he knows. 33 opportunity areas across London. We're out here 26, 27, and at one stage we were Kensal as well, but conversations around Crossrail kind of covered that a little bit. But we know that's where the mayor, well, the old mayor, we're pretty sure the new mayor wants to do something similar, is focus development and opportunities in those areas, but they're typically complex, they're difficult sites to deliver, they're large brownfield infrastructure requirements, they're really, really not simple. So from our perspective, this is a look at the site in more detail. For those over there, it's the area in yellow, it's 650 hectares of land spread across Zone 2, Zone 3 London, which in West London, when you think about it, we are our southern tip is a Hyde Park away from Hyde Park. That's how close to central London what is effectively probably the largest regeneration programme. Definitely in the UK, we're pretty sure is in Europe as well at the same time. So just puts it in perspective, this is a central London location. Why here? Well, the top line, the blue line is High Speed 2, the bottom line that runs through it is Crossrail, and it's the only place in the country where the two largest infrastructure projects that are currently being built in the UK meet. So that's at the point right in the middle of our core development site. We have effectively, we'll see in 2026, all going well, the construction of what will effectively be the largest station to be built in the UK in nearly a century. And when it's built out, will be the second busiest station in the UK behind Waterloo. So if you think about how busy Waterloo is, take 10% of passengers out of it, and that's what we'll be building on 140 hectares of brownfield land. So for us, it's an amazing gift. That's £1 billion worth of government investment going in before anybody else has kind of thought about, well, how do we put our hand in pockets, and how do we work with TfL and Network Rail and the landowners and the wider public sector. So given the kind of significant opportunities, the last mayor took a decision that this is a nationally important project, let alone at a London level, and subsequently there are three local, it straddles across Brent, Ealing and Hammersmith and Fulham, and the decision was taken, well actually, given the significance of this, we need to set up a development corporation which will be charged, single body with a single purpose, charged with driving forward the regeneration and creating a place and delivering homes and jobs for Londoners. City in the west, so when you look back at all of the areas in purple there, past Vauxhall, this area, City in the west, it is really kind of an emerging concept around, well, we've had City in the east, and East London has been the focus of London for the last 15 years, and rightly so. It's had the Olympics, it's had large-scale regeneration. That's where large-scale things have taken place. But actually, City in the west can deliver 140,000 homes, 235,000 jobs, and create space for 340,000 Londoners. And in a context where London's trying to grow by 1 million people over the next 10 years, it's a fantastic opportunity to help facilitate that. So when we look at when we start to zoom in a little bit more into that yellow area, that 650 hectares, what is, just to get across kind of the scale of what we're talking about, when you think about Wembley, Old Oak Park Royal, White City together, areas where actually today people don't really have a mental map of what goes on there. People will know White City exists and there's Westfield there, and I've heard something about, the BBC are gone, does anything really take place there? I've heard of Wormwood Scrubs Prison. I don't really know anything else probably, maybe I know Harlesden because I live there, but I don't really know anything else until I really hit Wembley. The reality is that between Wembley and Westfield, that area on its own, within about 6 or 7 kilometres, can accommodate, over the next 20 years, about 17 to 18% of London's homes and jobs target, as well as 35% of West London. That is a monumental level of development, which I think is really only starting to settle with us as we've kind of gone through this process of thinking about what role does Old Oak Park Royal play. So we have a significant responsibility to think about, well, how do these areas, how does West London start to knit itself together? So kind of looking outside our red line, and what can we do at Old Oak to make sure that Wembley and Harlesden and Park Royal and White City kind of fit together? And how do we, where do we put our streets and our public transport and our amenity spaces and our social infrastructure elements to kind of knit those communities together from the very, very outset? And key to a lot of these things are we're changing our thinking, but early concept was this green cross about great north-south, great east-west connectivity, and that principle that kind of underlines kind of our emerging master plan and our thinking. So this is our site. I won't go into this one, but 650 hectares of land, 3 boroughs, equally a third. Our board was previously chaired by Ed Lister. We're currently waiting on a new chair. I know the mayor has got some other priorities which he's trying to get to first. Not least how does he freeze the fares going forward. But 3 boroughs, our board, quite a hands-on board. Park Royal, our Old Oak is made up of 3 areas. You've got Park Royal, which is one of this, after the Olympics, this is probably one of the single largest industrial estates in London and performs an incredibly vital role for the London economy. We took a decision to include it within our boundary for 3 reasons. One, if you build a brand new city on its doorstep in Old Oak, how does Park Royal continue to function, both from a transport and a construction and logistics, but also from a, how will changing what future sectors will be interested in moving to Park Royal? The symbiotic relationship that could develop between Park Royal and Old Oak, and how can we, as a public authority, kind of facilitate that in a coordinated way? We've got Old Oak, which is 140 hectares. That's our core site, and I'll talk more about that. And we've got Wormwood Scrubs, and White City is immediately to the side of that, and that's 70 hectares of metropolitan open land. As I talk about Park Royal, we've produced what we call the Park Royal Atlas, which is a really detailed door-knocking exercise, trying to figure out who's there, what are they doing, and what we found out is there's approximately 1,500 businesses, 36,000 employees, across a whole range of sectors, but really the 3 big ones are warehousing and logistics, TV and film production, and food. Also known as London's kitchen, 500,000 sushi rolls a week made in Park Royal, so getting some on you. 500,000 sushi rolls a week made in Park Royal, and I've kind of touched on why we wanted to include it. There's an opportunity to intensify here. How do we work with the big segros and the big logistics to think about how do we factor in smaller micro business space or maker space alongside that? How do we improve the transport network and deliver utilities and help Park Royal? We've been doing a lot of work helping to establish what is a Park Royal business group, and subsequently funding the development of a business plan to help them think carefully about how change will happen. Wormwood Scrubs, I do keep meaning to change this image. It's an incredibly underused space. This is a Saturday morning when people play sport and fly their drones and stuff, but typically Monday to Friday, incredibly underused. What we want to do is to turn this into a space which connects White City and Old Oak and Park Royal and Kensal, and can become a real focal point between those places. But at the same time, we're absolutely certain that we need to keep it as an important leisure and an ecological gift, and we need to improve access to that. And when you build 2 new big areas around it, it will change the nature of the scrubs, and we have a responsibility to think about how we do that. So zooming into Old Oak specific, a fantastic opportunity, but you can see from the image there, it's complex, it's railway lines and canals, and not a million miles away from the image that Richard showed right at the very beginning about the Olympic Park. So I think that image is probably, 15, nearly 20 years old, roughly. This in 15, 20 years from now, what will this image look like? So, as I've touched on already, why here? We're building the largest station in the, High Speed 2, we're building the largest station in the UK. It's £1 billion of government investment. The area, in addition to that station, will have 4 other stations. 1 on Central Line, 1 on Bakerloo Line, and 2 on the London Overground network, meaning there are over 10 train lines with over 200 trains an hour passing through the area, making it, that's kind of central London connectivity. You won't be more than 5 minutes away from an incredibly connected centre. 8 minutes from central London, 10 from Heathrow, and 38 minutes from Birmingham. So the relationship that we do a lot of work with Birmingham at the moment, trying to figure out, well, what's the relationship between both these places? Will people live in Old Oak and commute to Birmingham, or live in Birmingham and commute to Old Oak? And where does the different types of office space get located? Another massive thing that we have at the moment is we have that cross-party political support which our board has signed up to, which has got Labour and Conservative and all the various DFT, DCLG, Treasury, High Speed 2, there's a local resident, local businesses, signed up to this vision of 25,500 homes and 65,000 jobs. So that starting point position of, yes, this is a good thing, it will be challenging, but it's a good thing as a principle. So trying to get away from that, not in my backyard approach, but recognising that this is something we should do. The area's got some amazing special features at the moment. We've got the Grand Union Canal, about 3 or 4 kilometres east of, although east of this image is what Argent have done around Granary Square, which again, they've got a kilometre of canal space right within their core site. We've got a kilometre of canal space. They're doing something fantastic, which has become a focal point. We've equally got some old heritage building. This is the Rolls-Royce building, just immediately behind, it's just off the canal, but was where Rolls-Royce had their main headquarters in the UK and in the early 1930s. There is space for growth. We have 140 hectares of land across kind of 3 or 4 big ownerships. The yellow is the land being acquired by High Speed 2 as work sites. The purple is owned by Network Rail. The red by Department for Transport. The green by a single large landowner called Car Giant. And the pink by Hammersmith and Fulham, that pink triangle. And then around the edges there are a series of smaller scale mixed ownerships. So there is the space there to deliver that, and this slide actually, 2 years, about 18 months to 2 years worth of work with central government produced this statement in March in the Comprehensive Spending Review, which is, I do like to read it out, Olddoe Common has the potential to be one of the most significant regeneration sites in the country over the next decade. And the government has therefore agreed to transfer the government-owned Network Rail and DFT and High Speed 2 land to OPDC's ownership. So in effect, we've become, whilst we have the planning powers and we write the plan and we do the community infrastructure levy and we determine planning applications and we have CPO powers and we do section 106, we now are a landowner for 97 hectares of land within that core area, which is effectively the purple, the red and the yellow, although the yellow isn't quite so straightforward. And then working, so across that you've got OPDC 97 hectares of land, Car Giant owning 20 hectares of land, some small scale sites around the edge. So actually, all we're trying to achieve is very deliverable so long as we can figure out a way to work together. Sounds great, huge challenge, and I'll rattle through this. Big infrastructure requirements. Initial work that we've done based on the kind of strategic master plan is the total infrastructure costs of bridges and utilities and schools, etc., is about £1.5 billion. Now, by comparison, Argent spent about 400 to 500 million pound on their infrastructure requirements. So we're 3 times the scale of that, but actually we are pretty much 3 times the scale of development that Argent have delivered at King's Cross, so it's a little bit comparable. But where do we put the infrastructure? In what format does it come? Is it bus? Is it ped? Is it cycle? Where do we prioritise value? A lot of work to do on that. This is, at the moment, what High Speed 2 are proposing in their hybrid bill for the Olddoe Common Station. Not great, it's fair to say. I think at the moment there's not even a front door on this station as they designed it. They purely see it as an interchange between Crossrail, Great West Mainline and High Speed 2. Clearly we don't. And I must admit, since I've started working on this 3 years ago, the conversation has moved from there's no front door to how can we make this station be a catalyst for regeneration in the same way as other stations around the world. King's Cross is a perfect example, St Pancras, perfect example of how that has facilitated King's Cross. You don't have to have an old building to do that. This is what Calatrava has done. New York with the Oculus. Now they spent £4 billion alone on this station. We don't have to do that, but you look at what Birmingham have done at New Street and how that station, on a much cheaper budget, has facilitated a comprehensive. That station is now connected into the surrounding area. So how do we do that? And we're slowly moving DFT and High Speed 2 into a position where they recognise that this station can catalyse growth. And actually, why they support that? When High Speed 2 was originally conceived of, it was one about speed and about capacity. Now very much the conversation from DFT is actually High Speed 2 is also about regeneration. And it's Olddoe that actually delivers such a significant quantum of that regeneration to capacity for the High Speed 2. High Speed 2 original business case had 1,000 homes and 10,000 jobs, and although we're now up to 25,500 homes and 65,000 jobs, so they kind of recognise actually this is a really good thing, and it chimes nicely with what Lord Adonis is saying around the National Infrastructure Commission, and how in the future should the UK be planning for infrastructure delivery so that we put it in the right locations to unlock growth. So it's fair to say this wasn't necessarily the reason why Old Oak was chosen as the station, as the location for High Speed 2, but it's a happy coincidence that this is what happened, and it's a perfect example of, well, this is coincidence what we should as a country be doing to prioritise where we put our infrastructure. So this is, don't mind the architecture of it, but how do we embed that station? So if you imagine the image that High Speed 2 already have, we've done some strategic master planning work to look at how do we create great streets that connect into these stations, which are usable by people and can become a really nice arrival space. So massive big bits of kit that we move around. I won't necessarily focus on this, but we've got some really big challenges. This is where the High Speed 2 station will sit. Crossrail are building their depot immediately to the north of it at the moment, and we have a huge amount of work to do with Crossrail, TfL, Network Rail, to figure out how we move big bits of kit around on the site and into the surrounding area. High density residential, again, another image to show, not something we should be afraid of if we do it properly. We've got the capacity to think about high density development in a slightly different way. So when you're talking about 140 hectares, this is a really, really big site, and there's ways that we can do tall buildings and smaller stuff, so long as we think carefully about how we create great streets around that. Environmental sustainability, how do we, again, think about can we be carbon neutral? What are the route maps open to us to achieve carbon neutrality, and the steps that we need to do that? But again, it's the scale of the development here that presents those opportunities to do that. While decentralised energy might not work for some way, and some people would even argue that decentralised energy doesn't really work anyway, but 140 hectares, that quantum of use and that mix allows you to generate those loads, that allows you to be quite sustainable. How do we connect into the surrounding areas? So this is Harlesden. GLA High Street funding's already gone in there. What we don't want to do is to build a major new London town centre that kills Harlesden. So we're doing a lot of work with the Harlesden town team, Brent, about where do these connections happen and what are the future uses that they can be complementary. We have a planning framework adopted by the Mayor in November. We're developing our local plan at the moment. We're developing our SIL. There's a huge, our challenge is we're starting from a place where there is no evidence. So we're having to do a huge amount of work to figure out what that is. But it's simple things like it's a major new London centre. It needs to be connected into its surroundings and deliver good quality open space. We have a strategic master plan which kind of demonstrates at a very big level what, how that starts to manifest itself. But where we are now is moving from the strategic level where we've got political support for what we're doing into, now that we're a landowner, how do we do detailed delivery? And we're just about, the people in the room, they know this, we're just about to go out to commission a comprehensive multidisciplinary master plan team to come in and to take the work that we've done today, bring it to the next level of detail about, well, where do the piles go and exactly how do we deal with the various impacts, all that, and how does it work alongside a funding and financing strategy. So our PQQ is out at the minute, closes at the end of the month with an intention that we'll appoint a multidisciplinary team this year to carry out 2 years worth of work to then lead to a situation where the development team of OPDC is submitting a planning application to the planning team at OPDC. And I will, if possible, probably not enough time, there's a short 2-minute video, I'm getting the thumbs up. A short 2-minute video of it. Is there? So this just shows 2 nationally strategic pieces of national infrastructure meeting at Old Oak. So it will be a real gateway into London and to Heathrow. So a network of opportunity areas around it. 10 train lines that crisscross, which is great for accessibility, but a challenge in terms of creating severance across the area. We're looking at how do we connect these 5 stations together, just through simple concepts of great streets that connect destinations and provide open space along them. and there's a wider movement network that exists across the area. How do we work with High Speed 2 to make sure that their HGV movement doesn't kill the businesses in Park Royal? And within Old Oak and Park Royal, it's not one place. This is very early thinking, but we know it's a series of different types of neighbourhoods, and there's a lot of work to do to figure out what the different character of these places will be over time. But this is the slightly reimagined High Speed 2 station, and creating an arrival space. This is, don't read too much into the buildings, it's pretty early stuff. But it's this notion that there is 65 sufficient space for a mixture of employment types, from the big floor plates to, at one end, the industrial space at the other, to what happens with that micro space in between. And we've got the canal, which is a fantastic asset, and for us should be a focal point, a real heartbeat. And you could do a variety. You could get rid of the nature reserve and build right up against it, or you could open out even further against it. There's different ways, but we do know it's something that we want to celebrate. So this comes back to this north-south connection for us, which is connecting Wembley through Harlesden, through Old Oak, through Wormwood Scrubs and out to White City. And how do we plan for buses and taxis, and if it is connected into the wider area, how do we make it not become ramped up or overly clogged with traffic? The two fantastic amenity spaces. We've got Wormwood Scrubs and we have St Mary's Cemetery just to the east of it. So an example of some of the bridges that we'll have to build, and this is just a reimagining of you put together Mile End Green Bridge with Stratford pedestrian bridge that connects Stratford town centre, and it could be something like that. But what we're keen to do is to make sure that it's knitted into the surrounding areas. So from our perspective, we're 14 months in. We know the area's got huge potential. We know it's got political buy-in at all levels, and we're plugged into various different government departments. And we know there's a huge amount of work to do, but actually it's an incredibly exciting opportunity to build what will effectively be a new part of London. I mean, you look back now, you might say, well, you look back at what the Olympics was 15 years ago, and so whilst they had the funding committed, and that was a fantastic opportunity, they did have a gun to their head and say, well, you've got to be ready by June 26, 2012 or else. So you can see when you walk around the Olympic Park that there was clearly decisions made that had to be made to get the games open, but that if you had some more time, you could actually have thought about them in a slightly different way. And we've got about 5 or 6 people in the team now who were there from the very beginning at the Olympics and are thinking, actually, we didn't quite get it right then, we can do it better this time around. So for us, a fantastic opportunity to build a new part of London. So sorry for going on, but that's it. Thank you very much.